Breaking, U.S. officially backs Iraqi Dinar Revaluation. RV finalized? Full report, 2025. Welcome back to RV News, your trusted source for daily updates, deep dives, and breaking developments in the world of currency revaluations with a special focus on the Iraqi dinar, Vietnamese dong, and global financial shifts. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and stay up to date with the most reliable RV content online. We're not just watching history unfold, we're tracking it in real time, and today, we've got one of the most explosive updates to date. Let's get straight into it. This is not a drill. We're talking about something the dinar community has waited on for years, possibly decades. As of this week, the United States has officially announced its support for the Iraqi dinar revaluation, marking a pivotal moment in Iraq's post-war economic rebuilding, currency reform, and financial sovereignty. The U.S. backing isn't just symbolic. It comes with a blend of financial assurance, international policy alignment, and a diplomatic green light that could finally tip the scales toward a full RV event. Now, let's break this down in detail. Sources close to Washington, D.C. policy circles have confirmed that discussions between U.S. Treasury officials and key representatives from the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, have been ongoing for months, but things intensified rapidly in Q2 of 2025. These conversations were largely kept under wraps, as both sides were working out fine details related to international reserves, exchange rate policies, and dollar-to-dinar repatriation mechanisms. But as of this past week, we received official confirmation from high-ranking U.S. economic advisors. The U.S. supports Iraq's decision to move forward with a revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. This comes after a comprehensive economic review conducted by both the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, which concluded that Iraq has met the necessary structural reforms required to sustain a stronger, more competitive currency. These reforms include stabilizing the national budget, modernizing banking infrastructure, and increasing transparency around oil revenues, all critical preconditions for a currency revaluation to be accepted internationally. But here's where things get especially interesting. The revaluation isn't just a hypothetical anymore. It's been finalized in policy terms. While the CBI has not yet released the exact revalued rate publicly, insiders suggest that we may see a dramatic shift from the current market rate of roughly 1,300 IQD to the dollar to a figure potentially under 500 IQD per USD, possibly as low as 1.1 in the coming phase of implementation. Now, before we get too far ahead, let's take a look at how we got here. Why now? And why is the U.S. getting involved? For years, the Iraqi dinar has been undervalued due to war, instability, and economic sanctions. However, Iraq holds one of the world's largest proven oil reserves, giving its currency the potential to be far stronger than its artificially suppressed market value. Over the past decade, Iraq has quietly rebuilt much of its infrastructure, improved governance under international supervision, and developed mechanisms to repatriate funds through legitimate banking channels, all part of a long-term strategy to return to economic normalcy and global financial credibility. With U.S. military withdrawal completed and diplomatic relations restructured, Iraq has moved toward a position of greater independence. However, it still relies on U.S. cooperation to manage dollar transactions through the Federal Reserve, a critical part of its import-export economy. Over the past few months, Iraq has taken major steps to diversify its foreign reserves, adding euros, gold, and even digital currency assets to give the central bank more flexibility and less reliance on dollar flows. But this realignment also required international cooperation, and now the U.S. has stepped in with full backing. In plain terms, what the U.S. is doing now is removing obstacles to the RV. This includes clearing settlement pathways, confirming that Iraq's currency valuation adjustments will not violate any current international monetary agreements, and ensuring that Iraqi banks can reconnect with the SWIFT global payment system without being flagged for sanctions or irregularities. That's huge. This coordinated support means we're no longer in the speculative zone. We are officially in the activation phase of what could be the biggest currency reset in modern Middle Eastern history. And let's be clear, this is not just about Iraq. This move could have ripple effects on other undervalued currencies, including the Vietnamese dong, the Zimbabwe dollar, and even some African and Central Asian currencies that have been artificially suppressed for years. Now, let's talk about the mechanics of what's next. Once the revaluation is formally announced by the Central Bank of Iraq, which, according to some leaks, could be within days or weeks, the rate change will be reflected through international platforms like Forex, Bloomberg terminals, and bank foreign exchange windows. The new rate would allow currency holders, including private citizens and institutional investors, to exchange dinar at the adjusted value, likely through licensed dealers or central banking authorities. Now, what does this mean for you, the dinar holder? First, patience has finally paid off. If you've held on to your dinar through years of uncertainty, speculation, and conflicting news, you may be on the verge of a historic payoff. But here's what you need to watch for. When the new rate is published, you will need to exchange through official compliant channels. There will undoubtedly be a wave of scams, black market dealers, and phishing websites trying to take advantage of the hype. Stay alert and make sure you're working with legitimate currency exchangers who are registered and monitored by either U.S. Treasury authorities or your national regulators. We also recommend keeping an eye on bank bulletins. U.S. banks, particularly Tier 1 institutions like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and JP Morgan Chase, may start issuing formal notices about IQD exchange procedures. Some may require appointments, background checks, or proof of purchase documentation to ensure compliance with anti-money laundering laws. So if you're planning to exchange large amounts of dinar, prepare your paperwork now. Receipts, certificates of authenticity, and identity documents should all be gathered ahead of time. There's also speculation, unconfirmed as of now, that the U.S. might offer special exchange rates or tax advantages to those who report early and comply with formal repatriation rules. This would be part of a broader effort to prevent capital flight and ensure that RV profits are reinvested into the domestic economy rather than moved offshore. Let's take a moment to understand the broader global significance. This move, a full U.S.-backed Iraqi Dinar Revaluation, sends a strong message about U.S. economic policy under the current administration. It says, "We're willing to back emerging markets that play by the rules." Iraq has fulfilled its end of the bargain. It passed strict anti-corruption laws, cleaned up its banking system, improved ties with neighboring countries like Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and aligned its monetary policy with global norms. In return, it is being granted economic recognition, and that recognition could set the stage for Iraq to become a regional economic powerhouse in the next decade. Oil contracts will now likely be denominated not just in US dollars but also in the revalued dinar, a move that would increase global demand for IQD and potentially reduce Iraq's inflation volatility. And that demand is expected to grow as Iraq partners with BRICS nations who are also looking for alternatives to the petrodollar system. So, what are the next key dates to watch? According to several insiders and leaked diplomatic memos, the Central Bank of Iraq may make its formal public rate announcement by the second week of June 2025. That would coincide with several important financial summits in Europe and the Middle East, including a joint IMF Arab League Economic Development Forum in Amman. It's highly possible that Iraq will use that platform to broadcast its readiness to return to full international trade capacity, this time with a fully revalued currency. Additionally, President Biden's economic envoy to the Middle East is reportedly preparing to visit Baghdad for a televised press conference that may include statements from both the U.S. Treasury and the CBI. If that happens, we'll be looking at the most public and formal confirmation of the RV to date. So let's recap the main takeaways. The United States has officially confirmed it is backing the Iraqi Dinar Revaluation. The Central Bank of Iraq has finalized its internal policy and structural reforms required for the RV. International institutions like the IMF and World Bank have signed off on Iraq's progress. The new rate may be released within weeks, with expectations of a 1.1 exchange rate or close. Private holders of dinar will need to exchange through official licensed channels. Avoid scams. Global financial institutions are preparing for integration of the new rate into Forex and banking systems. This is what we've waited for. The moment the dinar community has talked about, debated, hoped for, and held onto through thick and thin. The path has not been easy. Many gave up along the way. But if the current signals hold, we're entering a new chapter, one where Iraq stands economically independent and globally respected, and where holders of the dinar may finally see the fruits of their faith and patience. We'll be covering each eye,